Speaker, my questions to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, if exporting pollution was an Olympic sport, you'd be on the podium with a medal around your neck. We're not some 1.3% minnow. We're the world's third largest exporter of climate pollution. So will you apologise for misleading the public by saying nothing we would do would make a difference to the climate crisis and catastrophic bushfires? And given that you are so clearly failing in government's first duty, which is to protect its people, will you have the courage to apologise to the victims of the bushfires for exporting record amounts of thermal coal?
The Deputy Prime Minister. The Deputy Prime Minister. The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government believes and is taking action to address climate change. And the government should, and the government is. Mr. Speaker, by 2020, which is when the Kyoto targets were set for, we have the target that was set by the Labor Party when they were in government, and we will meet it. And we won't just meet it, Mr. Speaker, we'll beat it by 367 million tonnes. And so, Mr. Speaker, the Australian government is in that group of countries which is beating the commitments that we have made to the world, and we will continue to do that, Mr. Speaker, with the commitments we have retained for the Paris targets. So, Mr. Speaker, Australia is doing its bit when it comes to dealing with climate change. What we won't do is engage in the reckless targets supported by the Greens and the Labor Party under this false promise and, I think, dishonest promise that the member has been speaking both in this place and outside of this place. And that is to suggest that there is some trade-off, that if the government had adopted economy wrecking, as the Business Council described it, emissions reduction cuts that were put forward by the Labor Party at the last election, then these fires would not have taken place. That is an outright lie, Mr. Speaker. It is an untruth, and it is misleading those going through some of the most difficult times of their lives, and they have, Mr. Speaker, misled them grievously. And, Mr. Speaker, we will not do that. Our government knows about the need to take action on climate change, and our record demonstrates we are meeting and beating our commitments. What we won't do, Mr. Speaker, is engage in the reckless targets that have been put forward by the Greens and happily along with the Labor Party, Mr. Speaker, which will take people's jobs, and we will not support those reckless targets.
Prime Minister, the member for Melbourne.
Just on relevance,
the Prime Minister's indicated.
No mention of exports.
Member for Melbourne.
The question was about